In 1892, an American woman is suspected of murdering her stepmother and father. Her murder case is considered to be one of the most controversial crimes in American history. Lizzie's father is Andrew Jackson Borden, and her biological mother is Sarah Anthony Borden. Sarah and Andrew enjoyed a beautiful marriage. Andrew was of English and Welsh origin, struggled financially as a young man, and finally succeeded in the production and selling of furniture and coffins before finding success as a real estate developer. After the couple had been married for 4 years, Emma Lenora Borden was born in February 1851. Sarah gave birth to another baby girl, Alice Esther, on May 3, 1856, but she died before reaching her second birthday. Sarah's health deteriorated following Alice's death, as she developed uterine congestion. Lizzie Andrew Borden, who goes as Lizzie Borden, was born on July 19, 1860, in Fall River, Massachusetts. Andrew may have felt that having another child would be dangerous for his wife, and that Lizzie should be the last one. The 26th of March, 1863, was a typical Thursday in Fall River. As the Civil War raged on, not far from the coast, 12-year-old Emma Borden faced the most heartbreaking day a daughter could face, the death of her mother. Sarah passed away as a result of uterine congestion and spinal disease. She was 39 years old. Emma would remember Sarah's terrible suffering and death for the rest of her life. Lizzie, who is still a toddler, would not have the same memories of her mother as Emma. When Lizzie was a young lady, she was actively involved in religious activities as well as charitable work. She and her older sister were brought up in a mostly religious environment. Andrew had a second marriage on June 2, 1865. He married Abby Durfee Gray 3 years after Sarah passed away. They did not have any children from their marriage. Lizzie was 12 years old while Emma was 21 years old when the family moved to 92 2nd Street in 1872. Lizzie and her older sister Emma were often in conflicts over money issues with their stepmother and father, who was reputed to be strict and thrifty. On May 1892, it has been claimed that Lizzie was offended when his father killed several pigeons in his barn with a hatchet because he believed they were encouraging kids in the neighborhood to go hunting for them. In the months prior to the murders, tension within the Borden family had been on the increase, particularly because Andrew planned to transfer his estate to various members of Abby's family. Lizzie and her sister asked for the house they had lived in until their mother died, and they paid their father $1 for it before selling it back to him for $5 a few weeks before the murders. On July 1892, Lizzie and her sister traveled to New Bedford for longer vacations in response to a family disagreement. A week before the tragic event, Emma returned to Fall River, but Lizzie decided to spend 4 days in a nearby rooming house after arriving back in Fall River before going back to the family home. On August 3rd, Abby requested a visit from Dr. Seabury Bowen, stating that she suspected poisoning. For many days, the entire household had been extremely unwell. The doctor, on the other hand, claimed that it was most likely due to food contamination. A household member thought that the cause was leftover meat on the stove. John Vinicum Morse, brother of Lizzie and Emma's deceased mother, had arrived the evening of August 3rd to talk about business matters with his brother-in-law, Andrew, and had been invited to remain for a few days. He spent the night in the guest room. On a Thursday morning, August 4, 1892, Bridget Maggie Sullivan, an Irish housekeeper who worked for the Bordens, served breakfast to Andrew, Abby, Lizzie, and John. Emma was not at home at the time. After breakfast, Andrew and John walked to the sitting room and spoke for about an hour. Morse left at 8:48 in the morning with plans to return to the Borden residence for lunch at noon after purchasing a pair of oxen and seeing his niece in Fall River. Sometime around 9 in the morning, Andrew went out for his morning walk while his wife, Maggie, and Lizzie stayed at home. Abby went up to the guest room between 9:30 and 10:30 am to make the bed. Around 10:30 am, Andrew came back, but his key wouldn't work to unlock the door, so he knocked. Maggie unlocked and opened the door. He sat down on the couch and fell asleep. Lizzie cried out, "Maggie, go down quickly, father's dead. Somebody came in and killed him." Adelaide Churchill, a neighbor who had come to comfort Lizzie, Mrs. Churchill, and Maggie proceeded to go up the stairs, and when they were halfway up, their eyes were level with the floor. They were horrified to find Abby face down on the floor in the guest room. Dr. Cohen, the family's doctor, pronounced both victims dead. When they died, Abby was 64 years old and Andrew was 70 years old. When the police arrived, they immediately examined the Borden home's basement for evidence of an intrusion, but could not discover any. They also looked for a murder weapon in the basement and found 2 hatchets, 2 axes, and a shattered hatchet head. They also conducted an inspection of their rooms. However, it was merely a brief inspection. They could not find any other blood anywhere than the blood on the bodies of the victims. The room was clean and clear of any signs of a struggle. Detectives found Andrew's body warm, however, they found Abby's body cold, a sign that suggests Abby was slain earlier, perhaps 90 minutes or more before her husband. Investigators came to the conclusion that Andrew had passed away at around 11 o'clock in the morning. He was still bleeding from his wounds, which indicated a recent attack. In the downstairs living room, Andrew had been struck 10 or 11 times with an axe weapon while he slouched on a couch. The damage to Andrew Borden's face was severe, but it was barely unrecognizable. The Herald reporter, who was there at the crime scene, described his look as horrible. An axe with a dull edge appears to have been used to hammer a 6 by 4 inch wound above the left temple. His nose was longer due to an incision. The left eye had been excavated, and one of his eyeballs had been perfectly split in half. He might have been sleeping when he was attacked. A forensic examination found that Abby was attacked while facing her attacker, resulting in contusions to her nose and forehead. When she was initially hit with a hatchet in the side of the head, she was wounded right above the ear. The perpetrator then repeatedly struck her, killing her with 17 more strikes to the back of her head. When Lizzie was being interrogated by the police, they said that she frequently behaved strangely and gave conflicting answers. Some even believed that she was excessively poised and calm. She claimed to have heard a groan, a scraping sound, or a distress call before entering the house. 2 hours later, she notified authorities that she had not heard anything and had entered the house without thinking anything was wrong. When her father asked where Abby was, then she explained that Abby had received a message requesting her to visit a sick friend. Furthermore, she said that she believed Abby had come back, and she requested someone to check the 2nd floor for her. The investigators were surprised by how Lizzie had limited awareness of her mother's morning routines. On the evening of August 4th, Alice Russell, a close friend of Lizzie and Emma, chose to remain with them the night of the murders, while Morse stayed with them but did not sleep in the guest room. At that time, police were stationed everywhere around the house. An officer reported seeing Lizzie and Alice enter the basement, but he was unable to see what Borden was doing. Police assumed that someone within the Borden residence must have committed the crimes. However, they were confused by the fact that there was no blood everywhere else other than on the corpses of the victims. On August 5th, when Morse was leaving the house, he was attacked by a large crowd, and police were forced to bring him back inside. On August 6, police conducted a more comprehensive investigation of the residence. Emma was not at home when the killings occurred that evening. More people began to suspect Lizzie. She could not shed even a single tear, which led the police to become suspicious. The Bordens received a visit from the mayor and a police officer. Lizzie was informed that she was a suspect in the crimes. 2 days after the murder, newspapers began disseminating evidence-related information. Lizzie Borden, at 33, was suspected of being involved in her parents' murders. On August 8, an inquest into the Borden murders was held in the Fall River courtroom. Her request for her family attorney to be present was denied in accordance with a state law that mandates an inquest be held in private. District Attorney Hosea Knowlton questioned Lizzie Borden, Bridget Sullivan, family guest John Morse, and others in the presence of criminal judge Josiah Blaisdell. When her father arrived home, she allegedly was in the kitchen, reading a magazine. She then claimed to be ironing in the dining room. She also stated she was heading down the stairs. In addition, she claimed to have taken off her father's boots and put on slippers, despite the fact that he was still wearing them in all of the photos taken by the police. She believed that her father's issues with his tenants had something to do with the murders. Throughout her 4-hour evaluation, she displayed erratic behavior, repeatedly refused to answer questions, and gave ambiguous and contradictory answers. Her testimony was likely affected by morphine side effects because she received regular morphine dosages to reduce her anxiety. Bridget Maggie Sullivan, 26 years old housekeeper, is believed to be the key witness in the case and has also been identified as a possible suspect in the crimes, perhaps in revenge for being forced to clean the windows on a hot day. At the time, she was still recovering from the family's unexplained illness. On a hot August 4, 1892, after learning from Maggie about a sale at a department store, Lizzie allegedly urged her to go shopping with her. However, Maggie was not feeling well and went to bed in her third-floor room after having just completed cleaning the outside windows of the house. Around 10:30 a.m. when Andrew arrived back, he tried to enter the door with his key, but it wouldn't work since it was jammed. He knocked instead, and Maggie went to open the door. Although she had not seen anyone, she had heard laughter upstairs. At that moment, Abby had already passed away. A few minutes after 11 o'clock, she heard Lizzie scream for help. She ordered her not to go inside the room. Lizzie then instructed her to go seek a doctor. Lizzie was the only one she saw in the house when her parents were killed. Andrew and Abby Borden had stomach issues the day before the murder. She had been working with the family for more than 2 years and had not seen any evidence of Lizzie's supposedly bad relationship with her stepmother. They spoke frequently. Family members reported that their conversations were fairly straightforward, despite the fact that they haven't spoken for quite a while. Maggie, who is also being investigated, is said to have departed the residence later that evening with an unopened package. There was nothing suspicious found. John Morse, a 60-year-old house guest, recalled eating breakfast at the Borden home the morning of the murders before heading to make errands. He didn't spend much time with the family after his sister died, but spent the night before the murders. Police officers claimed that Morse provided an outrageously well-polished and overly detailed explanation for Abby Borden's passing. For some time, the police had him on suspicion. On August 4th, late in the morning, Lizzie made a request to Dr. Seabury Bowen, the Borden family physician. During the defense's cross-examination, Seabury admitted that Lizzie's ambiguous and inconsistent testimony at the inquest after the killings may have been influenced by the morphine he gave her. Charles Gardner supported Hyman Lubinsky's testimony that Lizzie Borden was seen leaving the barn at around 11:03 a.m. According to Lizzie, she was in the barn at the time looking for lead sinkers for an anticipated fishing trip. Although she claimed to have been in the barn loft, the floor was empty of any evidence of her presence. Moreover, the intense heat made it seem as though no one could stay in the loft for more than a few minutes. According to the police, Lizzie's testimony was suspicious due to the fact that the dust in the loft remained unchanged. 1 or 2 days before the murders, a plumber and a gas fitter testified that they had been in the Borden's barn loft. Police discovered 2 axes, 2 hatchets, and a hatchet head with a broken handle in the basement. The hatchet head was believed to be the murder weapon due to the sharp handle, break and the ash and dust on the head. A hatchet handle was allegedly discovered next to the hatchet head, however, another officer contradicted this. John Fleet, an assistant marshal in Fall River, recalled his conversation with Lizzie right after the murders. He called Abby Borden her mother, which Lizzie corrected. Lizzie said that Abby was her stepmother, and that her mother had passed away when she was a child. Lizzie admitted that she called her stepmother Mrs. Borden and believed Abby had married her father for his wealth. Adelaide Churchill, a Borden neighbor and star witness, remembered Lizzie wearing a bright blue dress with a diamond pattern on it, but she did not recognize seeing any blood marks on it. Hannah H. Gifford, who sewed a dress for Lizzie a few months before the murders, recounted a conversation in which Lizzie referred to her stepmother as a mean, useless thing. "I have nothing to do with her. I spend much of my time in my room." According to Alice Russell's testimony, the next morning, when she walked into the kitchen, he saw Lizzie tearing up a piece of clothing. She asked Lizzie about what she was doing with the blue dress. She said that it was covered in paint, and that she was going to burn it. It was never proven if she was wearing that dress on the day of the murders. She remembered Lizzie coming over the evening before the murders. She disclosed that she was about to leave on vacation and said she feels something, but she can't tell what it is. She brought up her parents' issues with stomach aches, which she blamed on the baker's bread. Then Lizzie said she feels worried something is going to happen. Since her father was so hostile to everyone, Lizzie said that she wanted to go to sleep with one eye open most of the time because of fear that someone may burn the home down or hurt her father. Alice also mentioned her conversation with Lizzie regarding a request for her to see a sick friend that she received from a messenger the morning of the murders. She continued by describing her reasoning for believing her mother had left the house and did not consider looking for her mother's body after discovering her father's body. The Borden home was thoroughly searched, but the alleged note was never found. She jokingly said to Lizzie that her mother had lit the message on fire. "Yes, she must have," Lizzie replied. These details, in addition to prior statements by Bridget Sullivan and Russell's testimony, provide more evidence that Lizzie was wearing a blue dress on the morning of the murders, which was sufficient to convince grand judges to charge her with the murders of her parents. On the evening of August 4th, While police were dispersed throughout the house, an officer reported seeing Lizzie and Alice enter the basement while carrying a kerosene lamp and a slop pail. He said it seemed as if she was bending over the sink, though he could not see clearly what she was doing. He observed both ladies leave the basement and Lizzie return alone. Throughout the trial, the defense did not make any attempt to contradict this testimony. Judge Josiah Blaisdell ordered her to face a grand jury and potential criminal charges for the murder of her parents. On August 11th, Lizzie Borden was placed under arrest by Police Chief Hilliard and was sent to the Taunton, Massachusetts jail, 8 miles north of Fall River, 2 days after the hearing was postponed. The next day, she filed a not guilty plea to the murder charges. On August 22nd, the preliminary hearing was held in Fall River. On November 7th, the grand jury began and presented an evidence. Alice Russell provided further information to the jury. On December 2, 1892, Lizzie was charged with murder. On June 5, 1893, a trial for Borden was held in New Bedford Courthouse before a panel of 3 judges. A jury of 12 men heard the state's case from Moody. The accused was defended by a competent defense team that included Andrew Jennings, Melvin O. Adams, and George Robinson, the former Massachusetts governor. Thomas Moody and District Attorney Knowlton were in charge of representing the prosecution. During his speech, Moody threw Lizzie's blue dress, which revealed the skulls of Andrew and Abby Borden. The autopsied skulls from both victims were permitted to be presented in the trial as evidence. Lizzie passed out, which lasted for several minutes when she saw the skull of father and stepmother in the courtroom. When Moody presented the axe head, he allegedly said she had used it to kill her parents. Lizzie did nothing but observe the murder weapon. The handle would have been stained with blood, according to the prosecution. Therefore, the murderer removed it. However, the prosecution failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the hatchet head found in the basement served as the murder weapon. Throughout the rest of Moody's 2 hours of testimony, the prosecutor claimed that Lizzie was the only one with the motivation and ability to carry out the double homicides. After the trial, the authorities confessed that they did not do a thorough search because Lizzie was not feeling well, and they were careless about examining for bloodstains on their clothes. On June 14th, following a decisive loss, the prosecution rested its case. After a brief break, the court called the jury back, and the prosecution again presented the evidence from the Fall River druggist, which is thought to have been the establishment where Lizzie reportedly tried to purchase prussic acid for 10 cents. Eli Bentz, a clerk at S.R. Smith's drugstore in Fall River, is obligated to testify before the jury on behalf of the state in regard to Lizzie Borden's visit. The day before the murders, Lizzie attempted to buy prussic acid hydrogen cyanide reportedly to clean a fur-lined coat. The state engaged medical professionals, pharmacists, furriers, and chemists to try to establish the qualities, properties, and uses of prussic acid after the jury was dismissed and sent outside with a palm leaf fan and ice water. Lizzie expressed curiosity in learning whether the acid might clean her furs, but the local medical examiner claimed that it lacked antiseptic properties. Despite the unusual illness that had plagued the house before the murders, no poison was discovered when autopsies were performed on Andrew or Abby. Since the incident occurred so long ago, the judges determined that the evidence should be excluded and came to the conclusion that there was no connection. Charles Gifford and Uriah Kirby claimed to have seen a strange person near the Borden home around 11 o'clock the evening before the murders. Dr. Benjamin Hanfi testified that at 10:30 am. on August 4th, he noticed a young man with a pale face on the sidewalk near 92nd Street. The prosecution's most anticipated witness was Emma Borden. According to Emma, Lizzie and her father had a great relationship. According to reports, Emma wasn't home when the murders took place. It was confirmed that Emma had visited a couple of her friends that day. A family friend sent her a telegram to notify her of the incident. She informed jurors that the gold ring discovered on Andrew Borden's tiny finger was given to him by Lizzie 10 or 15 years earlier, and he treasured it. According to Emma, Lizzie and her stepmother get along well despite her own bad feelings over her father giving Abby and her sister ownership of Fall River property. Emma was in love with a man who had a far lesser status than her, which was another detail that came out during the trial. Her father had been against their relationship. This information was also seen to be a contributing factor in Emma's anger toward her parents. The defense also expected Emma to testify about the Bordens' habit of burning leftover pieces of clothing, but the court turned down their request. Although Lizzie was the main suspect in the murders, other reports said Emma was the true killer. But there is no proof to back up this claim. Emma never showed signs of dissatisfaction in her life. In contrast to Lizzie, she exuded joy all the time. Before delivering a decision, the jury deliberated for an hour and a half. Associate Justice Justin Dewey, the presiding officer who had been appointed by Robinson when he was governor, presented a thorough overview in favor of the defense. On June 20, 1893, as his charge to the jury, before being submitted to deliberate. After deliberation, the jury found Lizzie not guilty of the offenses. Lizzie yelled happily, sprang from her chair, leaned on the courthouse rail, hid her face in her hands, and screamed again. Lizzie was congratulated by Emma, her lawyer, as well as others in the courtroom. As she walked out of the courthouse, she told reporters that she was the happiest woman in the world. On June 1st, 5 days before the trial's start, a second Fall River Axe murder took place. Theories about a tall male attacker were revived. Bertha Manchester was the victim this time. She was found dead in her kitchen after being hacked. Portuguese immigrant José Correa de Mello was eventually found guilty of murdering Manchester in 1894. Judges remarked on the similarities between the murders of Manchester and the Bordens, but it was later proved that he was not nearby Fall River at the time the Borden murders took place. Medical evidence proved that Abby Borden was killed by a tall man who struck her from behind. One respected physician claimed that hacking is almost a definite sign of a crime by a woman who is unaware of what she is doing. It was found that Abby passed away before Andrew. Her fortune passed first to Andrew, and then, after his death, to his daughters. However, substantial compensation was given to Abby's family to settle their demands. After the trial, the Borden sisters moved to a large beautiful home in Fall River's The Hill neighborhood, which they called Maplecroft. Lizzie began using the name Lisbeth A. Borden. Lisbeth became interested in theater. She frequently attended plays and socialized around with actors, painters, and other artists. Despite being found not guilty, Lisbeth experienced social isolation as she was avoided by Fall River society. Her identity was once again made public in 1897 when she was accused of theft in Providence, Rhode Island. In 1905, she was again accused of the crime. In 1905, Emma left Maplecroft, and she never saw Lisbeth again. In 1923, she moved to a different place for her health, as well as to avoid regaining popularity after the publication of a second book about the murders. Emma didn't get married. Lisbeth lived out the rest of her days in Maplecroft until her death on June 1, 1927, at the age of 67. In her final year, Lisbeth became ill following the removal of her gallbladder and died of pneumonia. Lisbeth had never married either. After only 9 days, on June 10, 1927, Emma passed away at the age of 76 from chronic nephritis in a nursing home in Newmarket, New Hampshire. Few people attended the funeral, and no details were published. The Borden sisters are buried alongside the rest of the family. However, there were no rumors concerning Maggie, who after the murders found a new job and afterward married a man she had met while working as a maid in Butte, Montana. She passed away in Butte in 1948, where she said to have confessed to her sister on her deathbed that she had altered her statement in court to defend Lizzie. The end.